power system is getting converted into smart grid. So this will be my outline of presentation. I will first briefly talk about the concept of stability and how it is assessed for different systems and different control techniques to make system stable. And then I will talk about the power system stability and what are its definitions and what are different types of power system stability. And then I will talk about the security. What is security of the power system and what is reliability? And then I will switch over to maintaining power system stability in smart grid architecture. Now, in today afternoon, you have lecture of Professor Soman, who will talk about wide area monitoring system, where with use of the PMU, phasor measurement units, which are synchronized. PMUs placed at different locations are synchronized through GPS clock, and in the real time, you can perform measurements of different phasors, voltage phasors, current phasors, and frequency. So with these measurements, we are able to do the real-time analysis of the system. So the wide area monitoring system utilizing synchro phasor technology, where PMUs are placed at different locations in power system, with help of this phasor measurement units, you may be able to monitor and control the security of the power system in real time. So once you maintain stability in the real time for a system, then the system may be made secure in the real time. Even under a worst contingency, we may be able to maintain, provided you have the real time monitoring of the system. And accordingly, the monitoring may be tuned to some controllers which can control the system. So we'll talk about that, and we'll also present some case studies based on the work of some PhD student. And then I will talk about concept of smart distribution system. See, the concept of smart grid will be incomplete unless we make distribution system also. So apart from transmission network, distribution system is also to be made smart. So once you made distribution system smart, then what features you have to introduce, and then we'll talk how to monitor, control, or protect, monitor and control distribution system, and how to protect it under this smart grid architecture. And also, I will present some case studies done by my PhD student. So first, let us discuss stability of linear time invariant system. Linear time invariant system is said to be stable if for bonded input, the output is bonded, provided there is no initial conditions. There are no initial conditions on different elements. In that case, you give certain bonded input and measure output, considering the whole system as a black box. And for bonded input, if output is bonded, the system is stable, otherwise unstable. And if you have initial conditions, if you for initial condition you want to study dynamic performance, for that we give zero input. If you give zero input, and if it is a linear system, then with finite initial condition, system is said to be stable if output tends to zero. Finally, that is at infinity. So this is case of asymptotic stability. This may not be case for nonlinear system. This is we are talking about linear system. Now stability depends on location of the roots of characteristic equation for linear system. So we can obtain the left half. You can obtain the location of roots if roots are in the left half of the complex plane. The system is stable. If we have right half as plane roots, the system is unstable. And if you have simple roots on imaginary axis, then you tell the system to be marginally stable. And if you have multiple roots on imaginary axis, then system is unstable. Then there are different approaches for stability assessment of linear time invariant system. One approach is transfer function approach. With transfer function approach, we consider the system as a black box, and you give certain input and you measure output. For bonded input, if output is bonded, you tell the system to be stable. But for farming the transfer function, you have to ignore all initial conditions. So this is only give this approach, transfer function approach is giving only bounded input, bounded output stability, but it is not giving the what will be. It is not examining stability of the system under initial conditions. That is, you don't give any input just due to initial conditions. The system may respond, and you have to see what will happen to that response. Finally, will it decay to origin or it will decay to zero? So that asymptotic stability you cannot obtain by this the transfer function approach. That is the limitation of transfer function approach. And the post disturbance input output behavior you can study uh, is for you can obtain different state variables. You can also can formulate from the transfer function. You can formulate state equation, but the selection of state variables is arbitrary. But in this approach, what are the initial conditions of the states that analysis you are not doing? Transfer function approach may not be useful for stability assessment of nonlinear system because you are obtaining transfer function that is output by input ignoring initial conditions, and this we are obtaining for linear system. For nonlinear system, this may not be helpful. Then another approach which is more powerful, which is state space approach. We formulate state equations of the system based on its mathematical model. You obtain state space equations. And based on state equations, you can obtain both asymptotic stability as well as bounded input, bounded output stability. Once you have state equations, from state equations also you can obtain its transfer function, ignoring initial conditions. And for certain bounded input, you can see what will be the bounded output, whether output is bounded or not. So you can have the bounded input, bounded output stability, and also you can have asymptotic stability. The equations are x dot is equal to fxu into t. Sorry, fxu t. It may be for nonlinear system also, and for linear the x dot is equal to ax plus bu. Now you can make u zero. What is u input? Even under zero input, you can determine behavior of state variables. So this can give asymptotic stability as well. So when there is no input, also you can determine stability. So both stability. And also not only linear time invariant system, you can also obtain for nonlinear system where x dot is represented by some nonlinear function of the state variables, control variables, and time. So in addition to post-disturbance input-output behavior, the dynamics of state variables representing internal variables, representing a, dynamics of internal variables can also be studied. In case of the transfer function approach, you consider the system as a black box. So you don't know what is inside the system and what will happen to the internal variables. For example, you suppose you have RLC series circuit. So RLC series circuit, say we are giving certain input voltage, and say output is taken across, say finally say across capacitor. So you get output, give certain input, give output, and based on transfer function, mathematically also you can obtain the output. But what about current through inductor? What about voltage across capacitor? All these which are inside the system. Because you don't know because you are considering system to be black box. So if there are initial conditions on the inductor, what will happen to current through different elements? What will happen to output? Similarly, if there is initial voltage across, on capacitor, what will happen current through different elements or voltage across different elements or output voltage? You don't know. You cannot know by the transfer function approach. But state space approach, you can formulate state equations. You can take current through inductor as a state variable. Similarly, you can take voltage across capacitor as state variable. And you formulate state equation x dot is equal to ax plus the u. The input is voltage source. And then you can do some analysis. If the linear system, you can have state matrix, you can obtain eigenvalues of state matrix. And based on location of eigenvalue, you can determine stability. Or if the nonlinear system, still equation of x dot is equal to fxu2. You solve this equation, you plot state variable as a function of time, and you see finally what is happening to state variables. If this plot is bounded, that is decaying with respect to time, then it is stable. Or if x versus time, state variable versus time is becoming unbounded, so it is unstable. So both for linear system as well as non-linear system, you can obtain stability by state space approach. Now, now there are different approaches for maintaining stability of linear time invariant system. One is Routh-Harris criteria, root locus, Nyquist. There is another approach for determining stability of LTI system, that is Lyapunov first method, which is based on eigenvalue of state. If eigenvalues are lying and the if left half of the scheme, that is eigenvalues have negative real part, system is stable. If eigenvalues are having positive real part, is unstable. If eigenvalues are lying on imaginary axis, then based on this first method, you cannot exactly tell what will happen. It depends upon what is multiplicity of eigenvalue. If multiplicity is 1, then it is stable, otherwise it may be unstable. So, Lyapunov was a mathematician who have given some general definitions of stability, which is applicable to linear as well non-linear system. He talked stability in terms of domain of post-disturbance equilibrium point. So, what it is that all state variables remain within the domain or region of attraction of post-disturbance equilibrium point. The system is said to be stable. So, and if states converge to the equilibrium point, finally, that is at t tends to infinity, it is case of asymptotic stability. So, for nonlinear system, it is not necessary that if system is stable, then states will converge to the equilibrium point. It may remain within the domain. It may say it all states may be oscillating about equilibrium point, but it is not converging to equilibrium. But still, the within the domain, within that region of equilibrium point, if states are lying, then still system is stable, although it is not case of asymptotic stability. There may be case of limit cycle or periodic orbit where states are oscillating. For example, I give example to my students, the moon is revolving around Earth. So this is not fixed, not settling. Moon is not settling to certain point, but it is still the system is stable. So in its orbit, it is continuously rotating. For how long in the past we don't know, and in future it will continue to revolve around the Earth. So like that, state variables may be revolving around the equilibrium point, but they are not crossing its boundary. They are not crossing the domain. Still the system is stable. So that is the case of limit cycle. So in case of nonlinear system, even system may be stable. There may be asymptotic stability where states are converging to the equilibrium point, or there may be some self-sustained oscillations of fixed frequency and amplitude, which is called limit cycle or periodic orbit, just like oscillate the rotation of Earth around Sun or rotation of Moon around Earth, like that. Now, question is how large is this domain? What is the size of this domain? So based on that, Lyapunov classifies stability into three types. One is local stability, second is finite stability, and third one is global stability. So local stability is domain is very small in size. So domain is small neighborhood of equilibrium point. So all states must lie within the small neighborhood of equilibrium point for system to be locally stable. And for finite stability, the size is some finite. Domain is finite. So all states should lie within this finite. Whereas global stability is very large domain. So anywhere if states are lying, system is said to be stable. So to my students, I give example of say some mother is putting his or her kid to the walker, and kid is small, so he is putting his or her in walker. So if the kid is within the walker, no problem. So mother can comfortably do her work and the kid is stable. It will remain within the water. So that is the case of local stability. Domain is very small, and the kid has to be within that domain. Then I tell, okay, child is grown. Now he can move within the his village or in his locality. He can go somewhere. He can play cricket or whatever, and he can come back. He or she can come back. Still, he is stable. So, but he is within that region where he can be traced. So that locality within that locality he is there. So we tell the system to be finite stable. So domain is a finite radius. And third example, child has grown, he has got degree, now he will go or he will go for doing PhD abroad. So any in within US or Europe, wherever he goes, it is the case of stability, global stability. So वसुधैव कुटुंबकम, ना पूरी दुनिया उसके लिए जो है अपनी है. So anywhere he or she goes, he is stable. So whole universe is the domain. So that is the case of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That is the case of global stability. Now, for state space analysis of stability, you have to do state space modeling of the system. So state space model can represent as x dot is equal to fxut, where x are state variables, u are the control variables or input variable, t is time, and output equation is algebraic equation y is equal to gxu t. Now, if system is autonomous, then x dot can be given as fxu, not function of time, but it is simply fxu and y is equal to gxu. If, if changes are small, even if it is a linear system, for a small disturbance, it can be linearized. So if change is small, these nonlinear equations can get converted into linear equations. Delta x dot is equal to a delta x plus b delta u, and delta y is equal to c delta x plus d delta u. And the output from this becomes delta. From this, these are state equations, so we can obtain eigenvalues of the state matrix for a linear system to be stable. Or from this state equation, you can get also transfer function. Or from transfer function also you can formulate state equation, but no initial condition. So from this, you can have the output delta y as this, and from this also you can obtain characteristic equation Si minus A equal 0, and roots of characteristic equation will also represent eigenvalues. Now, state space representation is not unique. You can represent state space equations in multiple ways, and based on that, you can do analysis. Based on your modeling, you can do the analysis, stability analysis. Now, uh, for large disturbance, you cannot linearize. So equations are non-linear. So one of a way of stability study of large system is you solve these differential equations by some different techniques, numerical techniques, say Runge-Kutta method, Euler's method. You solve and plot state variables. For example, you plot the swing curve, that is plot of delta versus time. So that is one way. There is other way where you have not to solve these equations. Without solving, also we can determine stability, and that is called Lyapunov second method of stability assessment. And that is this is the direct approach for stability assessment of nonlinear system. So what Lyapunov told, if within the domain of post-disturbance equilibrium point, if there exists some positive definite function v, such that its first derivative v dot is negative semi-definite, system is stable. Whereas if v dot is negative definite, it is asymptotically stable. But if v dot is positive definite, it is stable. Now, what is positive definite function? It is a function which is positive at all the points within the domain except origin, where it is zero. For example, consider this function. F, say, consider two state variables. So, state space is a plane. In this case, say, consider this function f x1 x2 is equal to x1 square plus x2 square. This is positive definite function because this is positive. This is positive definite in the whole universe anywhere except origin. At all other points it is positive, and at origin it is zero. So this is a positive definite. Positive semi-definite function is a function which is either positive or zero, but not negative. So apart from equilibrium point or apart from origin, at other points also it could be positive, but it should not be negative. So uh, this is the function which is positive semi-definite in the whole universe. Negative definite function is negative at all points except origin. This is the example of negative definite. Negative semi-definite function which could be either negative or zero. So this is the negative semi-definite. So you have to search some function which is positive definite within the domain of equilibrium. Outside domain it may be positive definite or negative definite, but you have to search some function within the domain of equilibrium point. And if first derivative is negative semi-definite, then what you have to see its first derivative. If it is negative semi-definite, then system is stable. It is negative definite, system is having asymptotically stable. And of course, this function has been searched based on change in energy during transient. And that function is known as transient energy function. What happens whenever there is some disturbance, say fault occurs at the terminal of the generator. So if fault occurs, what happens? There is acceleration of the rotor. So there is change in kinetic energy. So there is increase in kinetic energy. And the rotor position delta is also changing. So we talk about potential energy in terms of position of the rotor. So there is increase in potential energy. So you define transient energy function as a sum of kinetic energy and potential energy. And it has been proved that this is a positive function. And then once fault is cleared, what happens? Potential energy continue to increase because delta increasing, but kinetic energy now decreases because machine speed slows down. So it moves up to certain point and then it comes back. So that at that point where kinetic energy becomes zero, once kinetic energy becomes zero, it should come back. So that point must lie within the domain. It should not be outside the domain where kinetic energy becomes zero. So corresponding to that there is critical value of transient energy, and the transient energy function must be less than or equal to critical value for system to stable. So no need of solving differential equation, three equation, and other equations. Just we have defined this function, and you have to find the critical value of this energy, potential, critical potential at the boundary of the domain, and within the domain, if this potential energy is less than its critical, or within the domain, if transient energy function is less than this critical potential energy, system will be stable. And it is proved that it first derivative negative semi-definite, negative definite. Now, power system stability, it is ability of power system to regain operating equilibrium following disturbance. So, if system is settling to certain equilibrium point, it is case of asymptotic. But if all states are lying within the domain but not converging to the equilibrium point, that will be the case of periodic orbit or limits. Now, this post-disturbance operating equilibrium point may be same as pre-disturbance operating equilibrium, or it may be different. For example, consider angular stability, and there is monotonous increase in rotor angle, and finally it is converging to certain value. The new rotor angle may be different from initial rotor angle at touch. So, post-disturbance equilibrium is different from pre-disturbance equilibrium. Another case, say rotor angle is oscillating following disturbance. So following oscillation, it is quite possible that this delta may converge to the same delta zero initial angle. So that is the case where post-disturbance equilibrium is same as pre-disturbance. So post-disturbance equilibrium may be either same as pre-disturbance equilibrium or it may be different. And if it is not converging to equilibrium, then that will be the case of limit sign. Now, reliability, security, stability. What is reliability? Reliability, some person is told to be reliable. Reliable means you can trust that person. Whatever informations he is giving, you can trust that. Okay, you can think that is correct. It's okay, fine. Similarly, reliability of power system is ability to its probability of satisfactory operation occurs over sufficiently long period. So if the power system is able to supply consumer quality power, without much interruptions. So for sufficiently long duration, quality power is supplied. So interruptions should be minimum, and also we should have supplied quality power. Quality means voltage should be within certain limit. Like similarly, frequency should be acceptable limits. All this is the quality power. If suppose there is a satisfactory supply power for long duration, power is supplied, but suppose voltage is very low, so this will not be called reliable because equipments will be affected. Voltage sensitive equipments will be affected. So there are two conditions. One is satisfactory operation, and second condition is for sufficient long duration. Then security is power system ability of our system to survive imminent disturbance. It means even you have vast disturbances or severe contingencies, under that condition also all the constants are satisfied. So it relates to robustness of the system following imminent disturbances. Okay. So if all constraints are satisfied, then security will also involve this. Dynamic security will involve also stability. Stability is also one thing. So what is stability? Stability is continuance of intact operation following disturbance. So following disturbance, system again settles to some equilibrium point. You get certain intact operation point. But also it may have also periodic orbit. That is the also case of some say called marginal stability. So the ability to regain intact operation depends upon the nature of the stability. Then power system stability can be classified into three types. One is angular stability. Angular stability is ability of synchronous generators to maintain synchrony following disturbance. Now, why it is called angular stability? Because this ability to maintain synchrony is obtained by plotting rotor angle delta versus time. So, this ability to maintain synchrony is related to angular position of rotor with respect to synchronously rotating reference. And so, we can plot this rotor angle, the angle of voltage also, with some approximation and versus time. And you see how is behavior, bounded or unbounded. This is short-term phenomena. Whatever happens will happen in few seconds. Angular stability is a short-term phenomenon. Second type of stability is voltage stability. Now, angular stability is a generator-driven phenomenon. This occurs when there is power mismatch between input mechanical power to the generator and output electrical power which is injected to the power system. Whenever there is mismatch, then question of angular stability occurs. The machine either accelerates or decelerates, and that causes change of rotor angle delta. Voltage stability is a load-driven phenomenon. It is ability of our system to maintain bus voltage within acceptable. We have different loads connected to different buses. So we have to see if load increases or decreases, what will happen to voltage? Voltage rise, voltage fall, or voltage rise. So following load increase, voltage may decrease. Or following load increase, voltage may also increase, provided it is radial system. If it is not radial, it may be any way. It may either increase or decrease. So in that case, you have to see what will happen, how much is the maximum voltage decrease or how much maximum voltage increase. That must be within permissible limits. If it is not within permissible limit, system is said to be unstable. So that is the domain. That acceptable limit is the range within which voltages should lie. So that in terms, if you talk in terms of Lyapunov criteria, that defines its domain. This is generally a long-term phenomenon. Generally, the voltage instability has been found to occur due to increase in demand. With increase in demand, there is slow and gradual increase in demand. Voltage goes on dipping, and finally a point comes beyond which you cannot load the system. To try to load the system further, there may be instability, and then voltage may go on sinking, and that may cause ultimately to collapse if it is not controlled. So generally it is long-term phenomenon, but sometimes it may also be a short-term phenomenon. Long-term means it may take several minutes or hours, but it may also be a short-term phenomenon where it may voltage instability may occurs in few seconds. This occurs particularly when we have dominance of induction motor dynamics, HVDC converter dynamics, uh, uh, and um, the uh, power, uh, power electronics equipments. All these are fax controllers. All these may cause if these dynamics are dominant, then there may be similar to angular oscillation. There may be voltage oscillation also, and it may become unbounded if it is in case of instability. Frequency stability is the ability of our system to maintain frequency within acceptable limits. This may be also short-term or long-term phenomenon. Frequency stability uh, may exist for it. We talk about frequency stability is related to some part of the system. For Indian system, frequency has to be 50 hertz. So there is some acceptable range. Beyond that, if frequency goes, then there may be danger of there is instability. This may cause frequency failure of the system, grid, which you see, which are occurring in the system. Suppose frequency has gone down to say 47 hertz, 47.5 hertz. This is too low, and if this is too low, then there may be failure of the grid due to this frequency being crossing unacceptable, crossing acceptable. So frequency stability is the ability to maintain frequency within acceptable limits. Angular stability is of two types: small disturbance, which is also called small signal stability, and it is due to small disturbance, and this is due to insufficient damping torque. Since disturbance is small, changes are small, so we can convert the nonlinear model into approximate linear model, and you can use Lyapunov first method based on eigenvalues of system state matrix. You can examine stability. Transient stability, yeah, transient stability is stability against large stability. But there, this may be due to insufficient synchronizing insufficient synchronizing torque. So this can be obtained by solving the equations by numerical techniques or through transient energy function, that is the Lyapunov second method. These are equations you are familiar with this. We obtain model of different components to do stability study. Apart from rotor dynamics, you have to obtain that is synchronous machine model. You have to obtain model of exciter. This results into set of differential and algebraic equations, turbine model, governor model, load model. So that generates a set of differential and algebraic equations. So for obtaining stability studies, you have to solve this differential set of differential algebraic equations to determine whether system is unstable. You are familiar with this. This is single machine finite bus system. For this, we can formulate state equations, and this is the state matrix. You can obtain eigenvalues of this to determine stability. So I will leave these things. These are known to you. These are different methods for tangent stability assessment. These are different preventive and corrective measures against instability. That is, paralleling of transmission line, you reduce the reactance, use of transformer with low leakage reactance, series capacitor enhances power flow capability of the system, fax controller placement, use of PSS, and fast exciter with AVR, turbine valve control, fast circuit breakers. Then I talk voltage stability, it is ability of the system to maintain voltages within acceptable limits. And voltage security is ability of system to maintain voltages even under vast contingencies or adverse system change. Voltage stability may be of two types. One is due to large disturbance, uh, which is a short-term phenomena. We have talked. This is the few cases of large disturbance has been found, but mostly it is due to small disturbance. There is slow and gradual increase in demand, and finally a point comes where yes, you cannot uh, load this. System equations can be linearized. And this is long-term phenomena generally. You can have the algebraic equations, uh, and by load flow method, you can approximately obtain this. So this is another classification: short-term and long-term voltage stability. The, there is one phenomena defined in mathematics that is called bifurcation, and voltage stability may be related to, attributed to bifurcation. What is bifurcation? This is change in qualitative behavior of the power system, is known as bifurcation. So different types of bifurcations have been defined in mathematics. Out of these two bifurcation, saddle node bifurcation and half bifurcation has been assumed to attributed to causing voltage stability. Saddle node bifurcation may cause the static voltage instability, that is due to slow and gradual increase in demand. The point saddle node bifurcation comes, and at saddle node bifurcation, one of the eigenvalue of system state matrix reaches origin. At half bifurcation, one pair of complex eigenvalue reaches imaginary axis. They may cause voltage oscillations. So based on these two, voltage stability can be classified to two types. One is static voltage stability, one is oscillatory voltage stability. Static voltage stability attributed to saddle node bifurcation when at the bifurcation point load flow Jacobian becomes singular and one of the eigenvalue reaches origin. At And due to occurrence of half bifurcation, the voltage oscillation may occur and the one pair of eigenvalue reaches imaginary axis. It may cause periodic or limit cycle. So this has been explained by this curve. This curve is known as the nose curve, popularly known as nose curve. The nose curve is plot between voltage magnitude and angle for a bus, and once you increase loading, you see voltage is decreasing. A point comes beyond which there is no, you cannot load. There is no solution. So this point is called saddle node bifurcation. Before saddle node bifurcation, there are two solutions. Now this solution is stable and this is unstable. Why unstable? Because if system goes to this region, then voltage becomes uncontrollable. Both voltage and power becomes uncontrollable, and that may cause cumulative decrease of voltage. Why voltage becomes uncontrollable? Because suppose you have system is at this upper voltage, load bus voltage initially at this point. Okay. Now suppose load increases, then voltage falls. This is the normal operation. So with increase in loading, voltage falls. So all sensors which are used to control voltage will detect the decrease in load. So what it will try to do, it will try to boost the voltage to bring back it to normal. Now here what happens? Suppose say suppose load has decreased. So decrease of load has got voltage decrease. Decrease of load has caused voltage decrease. Here, with increasing load, voltage has decreased, but here with decreasing load, voltage has decreased. So suppose voltage has decreased. Now sensors are sensing decrease in voltage. What sensor will try to do? Since voltage has decreased, it will try to boost the voltage. But in order to boost the voltage, what it will do? It will decrease demand. Here, in order to boost the voltage, what it is happening? It is decreasing demand. Once it is decreasing demand, voltage is brought back to normal value. So suppose here voltage has decreased, then the sensor will sense it, and since it is sensing, okay, there is decrease in voltage, it will try to further decrease load in order to boost the voltage. But what will happen? Instead of voltage boosting, now it will further decrease. Once voltage further decreases, again the controller will try to decrease power so that voltage gets boosted, but instead of voltage boosting, it will further decrease. So this is there is cumulative decrease of voltage, and that may cause to the voltage value, very low voltage. So this represents unstable region of the nose curve. This represents stable region of the nose curve. So before saddle node bifurcation point, there are two solutions, two voltage solutions. One is stable, other unstable. For each of the loading, there are two solutions. At the saddle node bifurcation point, or the both the solutions become same. they converge to the same. And beyond saddle node bifurcation point, there is no solution. So this is the limit up to which you can load the system. And at this point, what happens? At this point, the one of the eigenvalue of system reaches origin. So you talk in terms of Jacobian matrix. Here, the slope of this curve, dv by dt, dv by d lambda is infinity, or d lambda by dv, or dp by dv, and dq by dv, all are zero. So if Jacobian is becoming singular, its inverse will not exist. So NR of L of Jacobian will diverge. Now, prior to saddle node bifurcation point, also there may be at some point, particularly say suppose induction motor dynamics are dominant, it may so happen that one pair of eigenvalues reaching imaginary axis. So that may cause Hopf bifurcation, and due to which similar to angular oscillation, voltage may also oscillate. Now, if once voltage oscillates, there is self-sustained oscillation of voltage with frequency and amplitude, that is limit cycle. Now, if eigenvalues crosses imaginary axis, these eigenvalues goes to the right hand side, it will cause system to be unstable. So that is voltage instability due to voltage oscillations, and this is due to Hopf bifurcation. So at Hopf bifurcation, one pair of eigenvalues reaching imaginary axis. There are different causes of voltage instability. One is difficulty in transmission of reactive power under heavy loads. So if suppose you say we talk about this radial system, actual system is a large interconnected system. But in order to understand this, consider two-bus radial system. So real power transmitted can be given by EB by X sine delta. Reactive power can be given as B E cosine delta minus B by X. So uh, uh, if demand increases, delta increases, you are able to transmit real power. But with increasing delta, cos delta will, with increasing delta, cos delta will decrease. And it is quite possible that QR becomes negative. If QR is negative, means you are unable to transmit reactive power to the load. So you are not able to fulfill reactive power requirement of the load, and that may cause voltage instability. Another is how cause is high reactive power consumption at heavy loads. If loads are high, if load in demand is more, then uh, the I square X loss, that is reactive power loss consumption, reactive power consumption in the network will increase. So although generators are sending reactive power, but high percentage of it is lost in the network itself, and that way so reactive power requirement of loads may not be fulfilled. That may cause voltage instability. Third case is heating of Q limit of generators. You know the generators has got only the P limit, real power generation limit, limited by the rating of the turbine. But you have so many limits for reactive power generation. Armature current limit, over field current limit, under field current limit, that is end region heating limits. So all due to all these limits, the reactive power generation capability of generator is more limited as compared to real power generation limit. So as demand increases, as reactive power demand of the load increases, generation has to increase. And in this increase, some of the generators may hit their Q limit. And due to hitting of the Q limits, you have scarcity of the generation, and that may cause voltage instability. Occurrence of contingencies may cause voltage instability. This is the nose curve for intact system. If some contingency occurs, the nose curve shrinks. Nose curve shrinks. Suppose consider two bus radial system, and load is supplied by two parallel feeders. If one feeder is out, then X will increase. So maximum power transfer capability will reduce. So nose curve shrinks. So you have less voltage stability margin. Here it is more. So that causes instability at lower loading. Also, it depends on type of the load. You see, as far as constant power load is concerned, this is what type for voltage stability. Say, for intact system, this is the characteristic of constant impedance load. This is the characteristic of constant power load. This is the operating point. Suppose there is some contingency, following contingency, for constant impedance load, still there is voltage solution. But for constant power load, you see there is no voltage sense. So it may cause the voltage failure of the system. Reverse action of OLTC may also cause voltage instability. What OLTC is doing? For OLTC, the typings are provided on the high voltage side. And suppose the voltage goes down, you have to move typing downwards so that you increase turns ratio. And with increase in turns ratio, we are able to increase voltage. It means for normal operation of type changer, the sensitivity of voltage magnitude with respect to turns ratio should be positive. That is dV by dN should be positive. With increase in turns ratio, the voltage should increase. But what will happen if with increase in turns ratio, voltage decreases, then control will fail. It will cause deterioration of voltage. So instead of controlling the voltage, it will deteriorate the voltage. So that is the case of voltage instability that may cause voltage instability. And it may occur, say for this radial system, say here there is tap changing transformer at the load bus. So we can refer whole network to the load side. This voltage E becomes N into E. The reactance X becomes Jn square X. So in that case, by voltage division rule, the load voltage can be given by Ne multiplied by, suppose load is a resistive variable resistance. So variable resistance means the voltage can be written as R by R plus Jn square X into N into E. Yes, any question? So we can give the voltage as NER by square root R square plus N. Magnitude can be given by this. If we differentiate with dV with respect to dN, this is this. So if R is less than N square X, you see this sensitivity becomes negative. So type changer will occur, operate in the reverse operation. Instead of controlling the voltage, it will deteriorate. Under which condition R can become less than N square X when load is increased. If load is more, if load increases, then resistance will decrease. If resistance decreases, in that case, R may become less than N square X. Also, in case of contingency, suppose generator is supplying load to two parallel lines. If one of the lines out, X will increase. If X increases, N square X will increase. With this increase, also dV by dN become negative. So you see, when demand is high, dV by dN becomes negative. So it means type changer is able to control the voltage, but this type changer is not able to control voltage stability. Okay, it is deteriorating voltage stability. So this is not helpful in voltage stability control. So for voltage stability, once at high demand, what you should do, you should block the type changer. Now, different methods of voltage stability analysis. One is repeated load flow. Because load flow is done at a particular loading. You see, this is the notch curve. So for each of the loading, you run the load flow until NRLF diverges. I talked that at this point, NRLF is becoming singular. So there is no NRLF solution. Jacobian is singular, so no NRLF solution. But the repeated load flow gives only approximate solution, because what is happening prior due to ill conditioning system before reaching nose point also, say at this point the NRLF may diverge. So it is giving approximate voltage stability limit. Also due to numerical error also, Jacobian elements may get truncated. In that case also, before reaching the nose point also, it may diverge. So repeated load flow is giving only approximate estimation of voltage stability margin. Other is case the option method is given by Tamura and others, that is the multiple load flow. And the continuation power flow is one method which gives accurate estimation of load flow. That will talk singular value and eigenvalue analysis. Because 1 hour has left, so I have to be little fast. Singular value and eigenvalue analysis, sensitivity based method. So these are different methods. I will not describe this. I will skip these things. And these are different ways of voltage stability assessment. Now, for voltage security analysis, you have to do contingency screening and ranking, contingency evaluation, and preventive and corrective actions analysis. These are different remedial measures against voltage instability. One is placement of series and shunt capacitors, placement of synchronous condensers can control voltage, placement of fax controllers by SVC, STATCOM, UPFC, etc. You can control voltage. Under voltage load shedding, whenever load increases, what you do in order to how you can make the system voltage stable. If our operating point is near nose point, there is very much possibility of voltage stability. But our operating point is here. We are very far away from the nose point. So system will remain voltage stable. So what you have to do, you have to operate at the light loading condition. But once load increases, load is going on increasing. It is because it is consumer have to get the power. So and uh, also uh, electrification is going on increasing day by day. So system is becoming more stressed with it, and due to stressed operation, the loading system loading is getting enhanced. So we may operate at this. Now what you have to do? If you see that load is high, you do and voltage has gone beyond certain lower voltage, under voltage limit, you do under voltage load set. If voltage goes below certain acceptable limits, you can do the under voltage load setting. But this is the worst option which irritates consumers. But if you can't you have no other option left, then you can go for under voltage load setting to prevent the system against voltage failures. Under voltage load shedding, blocking of the step changes under reverse operation. I told that reverse operation may cause voltage instability. So you block this operation for block step changes for reverse operation. Generation rescheduling. You can have optimal reactive power dispatch, and the optimal reactive power dispatch may be done based on voltage stability criteria. So reactive power output of generators may be rescheduled so that the that voltage stability margin gets enhanced. Now I will come to stability monitoring control smart grid architecture. Now, what is first before talking about smart grid? I talk about what is power grid. Power grid is an interconnected power network uh, uh, in which we have the generators at number of locations connecting generator connected number of locations which are injecting power, and we have loads at different locations which are drawing power from the grid. So this is interconnected network, interconnected large network where we have injections at multiple points by generators, and we have demands at multiple points at the load, and the power is transmitted from the multiple generators to multiple loads through interconnected power network, and that is forming a grid. It is not isolated system, but it is interconnected system. Now, what is the advantage of grid? You can transfer power from any locations to any other location. So, wherever there is scarcity of power, there is no need of putting generator there, but generator may be somewhere else, load may be somewhere else. Through this grid, we can transmit power from one location to other location. Okay. That is advantage, but see, this is a large complicated network, so controlling is also control of grid is challenging. You have to maintain different constants, and if the constants are not, you have to maintain voltage, you have to maintain frequency, you have to maintain line flows, all within permissible limit for secure operation of the grid. If these are not maintained, then it may cause danger of security of the grid. And there must be proper coordination among different controllers. Otherwise, it may have cascaded. It may lead to cascaded outages, and that may result to partial or total failure of the grid. One example was the grid failure which occurred on July 30th and 31st, 2012, and this was the case of the failure of relay coordinations. So, due to malfunctioning of relays, uh, it resulted into multiple trippings, cascaded trippings, and that caused the total darkness for nearly 2 days, and uh, in almost whole part of the country, except the western region and southern region. Why southern region was not disturbed? Because at that time the grid, southern region was not connected to grid, national grid, and the western region, although it was connected to national grid, but um, due to before something happened, it isolated itself from the main grid, and it protected itself. So that means grid has advantage of supplying power to any part of network, but it must be properly controlled. If it is not properly controlled, it may cause the network part of the network or complete network may be destroyed, and that will danger the security of the grid. So earlier, this is the way in which national grid was formed. Earlier, we, uh, we had different local grids, different electricity boards, and different um, companies. They are having different networks. Then uh, five regional grids were formed that were northern grid with headquarters at New Delhi, where power networks of states of Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, New Delhi, Rajasthan, Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, and Union Territory Chandigarh, Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh. It was state earlier, now it is these are Union territories. So power network of these were combined to form northern grid, having headquarters at New Delhi. Power network of southern states were combined to form the southern grid, headquartered at Bangalore. Western grid power net was formed with power network of western region, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra, Goa. Eastern grid was there with headquartered at Kolkata, and northeastern grid having seven sisters uh, power network seven sisters. Now, with this regional grids, these were also connected step by step to form national grid. So, in prior to 1961, each state electricity board were managing their own power network. So, in 61, the power networks of state electricity boards were combined to form five regional grids, which we talked earlier. Then in October 1991, northeastern and eastern grids were interconnected. In March 2003, western grid was also interconnected to this grid. In August 2006, northern grid was also synchronized to this uh, eastern, northeastern, and western grid. And finally, in December 31st, 2013, through connection of 765 kV Raichur Solapur transmission line, southern grid was also connected to western grid, and that formed a national grid. So now, today we have one nation, one grid, whole country is farming. For power network, a whole country is farming a national grid. And this is the one of the largest grid in the world, and this has got total installed capacity of 371.054 gigawatt as on 30th June 2020. Now we talk about what is microgrid, what is microgrid, and nanogrid. Microgrid is a large grid, large interconnected power network, like this is national grid our country. Microgrid is a small grid. So a small region can be locally fed through distributed generations and utilizing renewable energy resources. So that for a small region, there are local sources which are called distributed generation or dispersed generations, which may be utilize some renewable energy resources through which you can feed this local region. So that is forming a microgrid. This microgrid may also be connected to the main grid, or it may run in islanding mode. A nanogrid is very small. Say uh, it may be some building. A building is putting say solar cells at the top of its rooftop, and it is using to generate power to feed its local demand. So this is very small size, small grid, and this grid is called nanogrid. Again, nanogrid can run in islanding mode, or it may, if it has surplus generation, it can also inject power to the main grid. What is smart grid? Smart grid. What is smart person? A person is smart. He is intelligent. He or she is intelligent enough to take the decisions. So similarly, smart grid is utilizing intelligent controls for its operation. Intelligent controls for operation, and there is a bidirectional flow of power between utilities and consumers. So consumers may also inject power to the grid. Say people are putting the solar panels at their rooftops, and when they have surplus generation, they can also inject power to the grid. So consumer has become prosumer. Prosumer means producer plus consumer. So this is the new name for consumer, that is prosumer. They are able to produce as well as they are able to consume. So the power flow may become bidirectional from utility to consumer or from consumer to utility. And also there is bidirectional flow of informations. Bidirectional flow of power as well as bidirectional flow of informations. Information, say such, for example, voltage, current, power, frequency, all these can be measured by smart meters, and this data can be transmitted through IoT technology, through communication link to utilities, and based on that, the measurement also at different field locations through SCADA and WAMS. You can have different measurements may be performed, and these measurements may be performed by RTUs or measurements performed by PMUs in case of wide area monitoring system. And then measured quantities may be sent to control center, transmitted to control center, where there are application softwares to take different decisions based on results of this application software. For example, economic load dispatch, load frequency control, all these softwares are there at the control center. And based on output of the results application software, the appropriate decisions are generated, and these decisions are intimated to remote end. So again, this bidirectional flow of information. So both remote uh, uh, control center as well as remote location, they are connected in bidirectional manner. Similarly, consumers and utilities are also informations between consumers and utilities are also uh, they are can be exchanged. Information can be exchanged in the bidirectional process. So there is bidirectional flow of information. There is bidirectional flow of electricity, and the smart grid encourages environment-friendly renewable energy resources, because you see the conventional sources of energy are putting a lot of emissions. So thermal plants, the power production mostly by thermal, and this is putting a lot of emissions. So that is creating pollution, and that may lead to global warming. So we must go with those sources which are environment friendly, and these are renewable energy resources. Also, the fuels are getting depleted day by day. So you must go for that region also. You have to go for renewable energy resources. So a smart grid encourages use of environment-friendly renewable energy resources, and it encourages the wide area monitoring system. Now, what are different challenges to be faced? Uh, what are different challenges to be faced in smart grid architecture? uh, if you want to maintain stability in smart grid so that system is secure, this highly dynamic power system is secure under changing scenario. Uh, uh, Under changing scenario, uh, there are different challenges which are faced in the if grid gets converted into smart grid. What are the challenges? One is conventional methods of stability assessment may not be suitable for stability assessment under fast challenging real-time systems. You have to go for uh, new methods of stability assessment. For example, you talk about different methods which we have not discussed due to lack of time. Say multiple load flow continuation power flow. All these are time consuming. All the methods of stability assessment are time consuming. So methods are time consuming. So if you want to do a stability assessment of real time system, then you must have some fast technology, fast method through which you can have the stability assessment of the system. In smart grid, we have restructured power system, and restructuring will create new problems such as congestion of the lines. Lines may get congested, and if lines are getting congested, lines are overloaded. This may cause the problem of voltage instability. Voltage may decrease due to congestion. So, how to manage congestion in the real time? Congestions are to manage in real time. Sufficient ATC is to maintain under different operating conditions to make the system secure in the real time. Introduction of renewable energy resources are putting new challenges in maintaining stability in smart grid architecture. So renewable energy resources, particularly wind generators, wind speed is variable. Wind speed fluctuates, and this fluctuation of speed may also affect the voltages, and that may cause the problem of instability, say voltage instability. So how to tackle that? How to monitor voltage stability when renewable energy resources are coming? Um, Solar generations are coming, wind generations are coming. You have to see how to maintain stability under such conditions. Angular stability as well as voltage stability, all these frequency stability also under these new sources how to maintain. These are different challenges. Application of WAM. WAMs may be wide area monitoring system may be quite helpful in stability monitoring and control through synchro phasor technology. We can put phasor measurement units at different locations, and these phasor measurement units called PMUs in brief are able to monitor completely the health of the power system with time stamp measurements. That is, at the same time you are getting measurements at different locations. These measure, otherwise it will be of no use if measurements are not stamped. Earlier we had a SCADA system. With the SCADA system, what was the problem? We are able to measure the magnitudes of voltages currents, but we are not able to measure angles. So we are not able to measure phasors. So unless you measure complete phasors, you cannot do the analysis. So with PMU, which is providing time stamp measurement, time stamp means at the same time measurements are performed by different PMUs put at different locations, which are synchronized by GPS clock. So with these PMU measurements, you can obtain the power flow through the network, voltage at different buses, and the current flow through different lines. So you can check different constants. You can monitor health of the system. You can monitor stability of the system with these real-time measurements. PMUs are capable of fast estimation of voltage and current phasor using discrete Fourier transform or fast Fourier transform. PMUs may play a crucial role in stability monitoring control in smart grid architecture, where you need real-time control that can be done through BIMs in PMUs. PMUs may be placed at certain optimally located optimal locations, and it is not necessary that you put PMU at each and every bus to perform measurements. But with PMU placed at certain buses, the system may be made completely observable. What do you mean by completely observable? Means with limited PMUs, you can measure voltages at all the buses. You can measure current flowing through all the lines, and you can completely analyze the whole system. So there is no need of putting PMU at all the locations, all the buses, but at certain buses, optimal buses, you can put, and by that you can do the real-time analysis of the system, and you can make the whole system completely observable. Now, optimal placement of fast controllers. Fast controllers are able to inject reactive power and control reactive power flow through the network. By controlling reactive power flow, you can control angular stability as well as voltage stability. And you can make the system more secure. Now, these facts parameters, if you want to have the real-time control by facts, reactive control by facts, these fact parameters are to be tuned with PMU measurement. And then banks may be helpful in security monitoring of the system. So facts parameters are to be automatically controlled through PM measurements. Facts have to provide immediate reactive support for real-time system against instability. Line congestion ATC of real-time system are to be fast monitored through PMU measurements and are to be controlled by facts and other controls. This is one paper based on this is case study that done by my PhD student Pankaj Sahu, and who considered the optimal placement of PMU to uh, do voltage stability estimation under contingency. So to make the system voltage secure, he has put PMUs optimally. So this objective of the paper was to consider optimal placement of PMUs, considering the impact of voltage stability under critical contingency. So in order to make the network completely observable, the PMUs were to be optimally placed at certain location. And these he has considered complete observability not only for intact case but also in the critical contingency. And he uh, consider the monitoring of voltage stability of real-time system with optimally placed PMU. So the voltage stability different consider different contingency line outages. For that he obtain the contingency ranking based on voltage stability margin. What is voltage stability margin? Distance between base case operating point and the nose point. So this is the voltage stability margin for contingency I. Voltage stability margin for contingency J. Contingency has J has got lower voltage stability margin, so this was considered more severe. So based on the voltage stability margin, you identified critical contingency. And for these critical contingencies, he did observability analysis based on PMU placement. He considered the change in real power demand and reactive power demand like this. PDI is PDI base, the 1 plus lambda loading factor. And QDI was considered KQDI. K is used to change the pattern of the load variation. So we consider K 0.2, 0.5, 1, 1.2. So different patterns of load variations he considered. So for that, he considered placement of PMUs. And he used the binary integer linear programming for placement of PMU, where the problem is given by xi is equal to 1 if PMU is placed at bus I and it is 0 if not placed. And then he summarized the CI xi. CI is the cost associated with PMU, but he has not considered, he had taken CI, he had not done cost benefit analysis. So he considers CI as 1 in his work. And minimized sigma I is equal to 1 to n xi, and constant was fjx was greater than equal to 1 for different buses. So if it is more than 1 PMU is placed, less than 1 PMU not 0, then PMU not. So with this, he obtained the location of PMUs for IEEE 14 bus system, NRPG 246 bus Indian power practical power system, and New England 39 bus system. Three systems he considered. He considered placement of PMUs in these systems, and these were observability rules used to obtain optimal location of PMUs that optimized PMU location, not and avoided use of PMU at all locations. So these rules were the voltage and current phases at one end of a branch are known. Voltage phasor other end can be calculated using Ohm's law. So if you put PMU at one of the bus and other bus is connected to this bus through a certain branch, no need of putting PMU at second end bus because that voltage can be calculated in Ohm's law. If voltage phasor at both ends of a branch are known, then branch currents can be calculated. And if there exists zero injection bus, you have not to put PMU at that bus because with KCL you can calculate current on all the branches. So the considered PMU placement. This is 14 bus system of 10 voltage stability margin. These were the different locations of PMUs. For in that case, you obtain 3 locations of PMU, bus number 2, bus number 6, bus number 9, and observability index was 14. 14 means just equal to number of buses for the system. And for different outages, you obtain observability indexes. For most of the cases, more than 14, or for some cases, 13, less than 14. Then we combined, these are severe contingencies, severe line outages. Then he combined PMU location for all the contingency cases that resulted in PMU at 5 buses. Bus number 2, 4, 5, 6, and 9. And with PMU placed at these 5 buses, he got observability indexes 24, much above 14. So even if some PMUs are lost due to contingencies or due to some data is lost, then uh, also it is able to maintain security of the system. Then also it is able to observe the system, completely observe the system. Then you obtain nose curve of critical bus 4 with PMU, without PMU, almost same results. The second paper was with PMU. Once he had installed PMU, then with PMUs, he estimated voltage. With PMU measurements, he estimated voltage stability margin using curve fitting technique. The curve fitting, the nose curve he has approximated as using this expression, nose curve he has estimated by quadratic approximation. Lambda is equal to A1 V square plus A2 V plus A3. So what he have done, he had done PMU measurement at 3 points, at 3 loading points. At 3 loadings, he obtained PMU measurements. So this is the quadratic expression of nose curve. If you differentiate this with respect to voltage, you get this. At the nose point, d lambda by dV is 0. So if d lambda by dV is 0, then if you put if you make d lambda by dV 0, then V becomes equal to minus A2 by 2A1. You put this V here, lambda max comes as this. It means if you know these constants A1, A2, A3, then you can estimate the maximum loadability of the system. So these constants he has evaluated using 3 PME measurements. Now, suppose this is a loading factor at some of the load for which measured voltage was V1. Then it is equation is varied for that point. Lambda 1 can be given by A1 V11 square plus A2 V11 plus A3. Similarly, for other loading points, say this is lambda 2 measured voltage is V. And third loading point, lambda 3 measured voltage V3. So with once these voltages V1, V2, V3 are measured by PMU. They are measured by PMU. And these are loads at which voltages were measured. So we get 3 equations in terms of 3 unknowns A1, A2, A3. That was solved to evaluate constants. And once constants were evaluated with PMU measurements, lambda max was estimated. That gives voltage stability margin. So he calculated this voltage stability margin for system in that case as well as critical contingency cases. Critical contingency here identified based on voltage stability margin. Then you obtain lambda curve V curve by 3 approaches. First approach by running full continuation power flow. Second by two-step continuation power flow, which is some existing literature. And third with PMU measurement. For that, use RTDS at IT Kanpur. At that time, we are not having RTDS. Now we have purchased RTDS software. RTDS So we have RTDS laboratory in IIT BHU now. Earlier you are not having. So he was going to IIT Kanpur to perform the measurements on RTDS. So obtain voltage per imaging by three approaches. These are nose curves, and you see that for real-time system and PMU measurements were obtained, it was much different from the other two approaches. So you see the in real scenario, uh, things is much different from whatever you do on theoretical analysis of the system based on offline analysis. Then I talk that the concept of smart grid will be incomplete unless distribution system is also made smart. So apart from maintaining security of transmission network, also we have to maintain security of distribution network. It means to maintain security of distribution network, the distribution network has to be made stable and power flow through the lines, uh, voltages, all these are to be controlled properly for distribution network. So we will discuss how to make distribution network smart, uh, and for this smart distribution, in a smart distribution system, how to monitor, control, and protect this smart distribution network. So what are different features of smart distribution system? Similar to the transmission network, you have substation and you have consumers. Through substation, the consumers are supplied through different distribution transformers at different localities. There must be bidirectional flow of electricity and information between consumers and suppliers. There must be automated online monitoring control of distribution network through smart metering scheme. For smart metering, there should be measurements performed at consumer premises. It should be transmitted to substation. At substation, there must be some controls of application softwares, and based on its running software, decisions like billing, and flow of control of overcurrent, detection of theft. All these are issues related to distribution network, detection of theft, detection, uh, uh, overcurrent, mm, protection, protection against overcurrent. Unbalancing is the one of the main issue in the distribution networks, how to balance load. So all these has to be done based on the measured quantities from smart meters. All decisions like load balancing, uh, theft detection and removal, and overcurrent protection of feeders are to be done based on measured quantities. And according so there should be bidirectional flow of electricity as well as information from consumers. Consumers are also producing electricity. Consumers are becoming prosumer, and information is exchanged between consumer and supplier. There is automatic online monitoring control of distribution network through smart metering. This includes distributed generations, microgrid, and we have talked. It will utilize electric vehicles, which can, which is environment friendly, and also it can also contribute in injection of power to the grid, and it can also draw power. It can operate in vehicle to grid or grid to vehicle mode. There will be different energy storage devices, maybe battery energy storage system, capacitor energy storage system, magnetic energy storage system. Smart grid will utilize different energy storage systems. There must be complete automation of distribution network through SCADA and VAMs. And we have to address different power qualities like load balancing, the voltage sag, voltage swell, harmonics, element detection, emulation, all these things. There must be reliable supply of energy. Smart distribution system is a self-healing network. With remote control switches, it be able to heal itself to some extent. And you have through remote control switches, you have outage management system. There must be automatic customer billing Customers should be able to control their loads based, and they can, based on information of the load, they can switch over also load from one period to other period. And customers can also control their billing based on switching our loads on different periods. And billing has to be automatic, so everybody knows, customer knows what will be its tariff, what is the bill. Smart home, it will have a smart home, smart buildings, and customer plays a key role in smart distribution system. It becomes prosumer, producers as well as consumers. Smart distribution system architecture consists of smart meters at consumer premises, a proper communication system between consumer and utilities, and there is some distribution management system or control system. There are different application softwares, a load dispatch center and control center. So where decisions are taken. So this is some smart distribution system architecture where this is the smart meter at the consumer premises. Consumer may be residential or industrial consumer, and this is the load data concentration. Here we have the control center. Control center may be installed at the local distribution transformer, and this is the local data concentrator plus the local control devices are there at the control center connected to a smart meter for communication, bi-directional communication channel. And here we have substation where different controls are done at substation level. So this substation is also connected to this control center through bi-directional communication link. And this may be the wired, the communication may be wired or wireless. For short range communication, this may be wired or wireless, but for long range communication is must be wireless. So it may be through satellite communication. So we have smart meter at residential or industrial consumer customers, and here smart meters installed at the local low voltage distribution transformers, and there are master controller which is put at substation, and these are linked through satellite communication. What are the function of smart meters? They provide time stamp. They must provide time stamp measurement, just like PMUs. The they must be synchronized. They should be able to provide time stamp accurate readings to customers, suppliers, and other market players for billing, control, and observation purposes. They should be able to store measured data for some definite period so that the analysis can be done. Smart meters should be able to limit the maximum power consumption of the consumer and should be able for remote disablement and enablement. Suppose some consumer is exceeding its power consumption. Suppose some consumer is having 7 kilowatt uh, um, connection and he is drawing 10 kilowatt. Then through a smart metering it can be detected, and through a remote control the utility should be able to disable its supply. And once it reduces its consumption, it can be enabled. So it provides through smart metering the maximum power consumption of the consumers can be limited, and it can have the remote disablement and enablement of supply. There is bidirectional communication and capability with control center and other market players. And there must be alert and alarms to control center in case of electricity theft and meter tampering. Now, communication, the desirable features of communication system in a smart distribution system. This communication system must be reliable. Data must be secure. Once you transmit the data through IoT, the danger of cyber insecurity. Data may be hacked by hackers. There should be appropriate mechanism to maintain cyber security in transmission of data so that it is free from hackers and it is securely transmitted from consumer to utility. It should not be affected. System should not be affected by weather conditions. It should be different, interference free, tamper proof, and it must be cost effective. Communication system may be either wired through Ethernet and power line communication at PLC, or it may be wireless through such as Wi-Fi, GSM, Global System Mobile, WiMAX, Zigbee, etc. Then the function, there may be local controller which may be put at DT, distribution transformer, and master controller may be put at the main substation. The functions of local controllers may be, say, phase identification, which load is connected to which phase, phase load balancing, protecting overcurrent in different phases, connection and disconnection of load. If some of the phase gets say overloaded, it should be able to local control device should be able to disconnect it. If it is that overcurrent is reduced, current comes to within limit, can be reconnected. Or some theft is there. In that case, also it may be disconnected. So these things are there. Prevent shutdown of critical loads. But while doing this reconnection and disconnection of loads, it has to keep in mind that some important loads should not be disturbed. For example, hospital loads. Hospital loads are emergency loads. So even if some problem is there, say overcurrent there, or load is not balanced, still we have to cut other loads which are not important. They can bear they can bear some uh, disconnection of power for some time, but emergency loads must be maintained, should not be cut. So critical loads should be maintained. There should be no shutdown of critical loads. The local controller should be able to detect the theft of the power. It should be able to detect tampering of the meters. It should be able to identify different faults and able to remove faults in the system, in the feeder. And smart reading the local controller is receiving the data from smart meters through communication link. This data should be able to further transmit to the substation. Smart distribution systems will have the distributed generations. Distributed generations may be photovoltaic, wind generation system, biomass, etc. Smart distribution system will encourage energy storage system. Energy storage system may be pumped storage hydro plants, flash wheels, supercapacitors, magnetic energy storage system, battery energy storage system, fuel cells, and presently by the government, the there is some India Energy Storage Alliance (IESA) has estimated our 73 gigawatts of storage by generation by energy storage source system by the year 2022. That is 75th anniversary of our freedom. Now, consumers may play important role in smart distribution system. Consumer becomes prosumer. It is able to produce as well it is able to consume, which we have talked. It will have you can use pollution-free electric vehicles with a smart charging facility. It should consumers will be able to control its home appliances through remote control and smartphones. Consumers may be able to shift loads from off-peak hours to least loads from peak hours to off-peak hours based on smart meter observations, and thus consumers help in energy management system. It is able to control. Consumers are able to control the electricity bills because through smart metering they are able to see how much is the bill, and accordingly it can plan its loads, operation of its loads to control its bills. Now, this is some paper based on the work of my PhD student Alok Jain, and he had done some survey of a smart metering project at some location in New Delhi. The smart meter, there is a smart metering project at Badarpur in New Delhi, and he has based on that he made certain observations with a special energy meter, a smart meter, and then presented some paper based on that highlighting the benefit of smart metering scheme. That is done using Sync 2000 and Sync 5000 in Indian power system. So we have talked all these things with smart meters. It is with a smart grid architecture. We are able to monitor from the control center consumer demand, voltage, frequency, power factor. Through smart meters, the data can be. I can continue for 10 more minutes. So through smart meters, uh, uh, consumers can send data to central data collection system through fast satellite communication link, and meters can get information regarding consumption of energy in real time to all consumers to display devices. So this is the smart metering project put in by company Kalkitech in south area of Delhi, and just I will go to observations. He got different observations. These are readings of smart meters, which is a single phase smart meter and single phase energy meter. This is smart meter. This is special energy meter readings. And smart meter is able to record voltage, line to meter voltage, current, frequency, kVA, power factor, and total kilowatt consumed. And he got, and the special energy meter, he got this observation for the period 7th March 2015 to 30th March 2015. And for this 1 week period, he obtained that the total energy consumption based on smart meter reading came as 28.024 kilowatt hour. That is initial rating is 46. Uh, initial reading is mm, final reading 46.659 kilowatt. Initial reading was 18.635 kilowatt. And with special energy meter, it was final reading was 629 kilowatt. Initial reading is 601 kilo. And so he got total energy consumption based on smart measurement at 28.024 kilowatt hour. Whereas based on special energy meter, it came 28 kilowatt hour. So there was difference of 0.024 kilowatt hour. This difference seems to be small if you consider 1 week period, but if you consider say annual for 1 year, you have to multiply by say whole year. This is for 1 week. So corresponding consumption you get for whole year, then it is quite large. So you see, if this error is prevented, then there may be lot of change in revenue. Revenue may be saved because based on a special energy meter, utility be charged for this much only. So this will not be charged. So if this is not charged for the whole year, you see so how much loss of revenue is coming to the utility supply power utility, which is supplying to consumer. So that revenue can be saved with based on smart meter reading. Now, this is the work of my PhD student Alok Jain, and he worked on the monitoring, control, and protection of radial distribution network using a two-level control architecture. So he had designed a smart distribution system where this is the main substation where master controller is which is putting secondary control, and this substation is getting power from grid, and this master controller is linked to local controller. These local controllers are put at different distribution transformers, and this master controller is linked to local controller in bidirectional fashion. Now, smart meters are put at consumer premises, and all these smart meters in a particular area, this is supplied by this distribution transformer, is connected in all smart meters connected local controller in bidirectional manner. So these are different DTs. These DTs are supplying different loads. The loads are having smart meters, and at DT we have local controller, where we have most of the primary controls. Where some controls are secondary control, which is done by master controller. So master controller interact with local controller in bidirectional fashion. Master controller is main substation. Local controllers are distribution transformers, and local controllers are able to interact with master controller as well as smart meters in bidirectional fashion. So he has performed different functions based. He has developed two models. One model he has developed on MATLAB Simulink, and second results he has verified in Opal RT real-time simulator. Now, the task performed we consider by master controller was load shedding and load reconnection based on available power, while not disturbing critical loads. So when power at the input of the substation get reduced, accordingly some loads are cut. Which loads are to be disconnected is decided by this master controller. Now power may be scarcity of power. If suppose voltage goes down, then the voltage sensitive loads may be affected. The power may go down. So if this power may be expressed as a function of voltage, current, and power factor, VI cos phi. So if voltage, current, and power factor changes, available power at feeder may get changed. And based on that, if this available power is getting lower than certain value, then some of the loads are disconnected. So master controller perform at the main substation performs the task of load shedding and reconnection based on available power at the substation, main substation, without disturbing critical load. And how it is done, master, this is the algorithm. I said, I think there's not much time. I will skip all these things, algorithms. These are functions performed by local controller. Local controller is making phase load balancing, and it is detecting overcurrent in certain feeders and eliminating overcurrent. It is detecting thefts, etc. So these are algorithms which are developed for load balancing. This is for load balancing. This is for theft detection, and it also considers simultaneous occurring of different events like load unbalancing, theft, power theft, all these things, overcurrent. He has considered a test system where we have two areas. Each area is having 21 loads connected to it. It's a radial system, and there are two distribution transformers, DT1, DT2. So here there is local controller, here there is local controller, and at the main substation there is master controller. And at each of the loads, we have smart meters. So smart meters are sending data to local controller to bidirectional communication link, and this local controller interacting with master controller to bidirectional. So whenever there is shortage of available power, then that is detected by master controller, and it then based on the load setting algorithm, it disconnects certain loads in different two areas. Once power comes to the normal value, the loads are reconnected. Similarly, we have different feeders. So this is the phase A feeder, phase B, phase C. If in any of the phase the current exceeds its limiting value, that is there is overcurrent in certain phase, that overcurrent is detected by local controller, a distribution transformer. And based on the that overcurrent protection algorithm, that overcurrent detects some of the loads are disconnected to make the to bring control within the limiting value. And once after some time these are reconnected, and again it is checked, okay, still there is overcurrent or not. If you know, then again some disconnection is done. All these things are done at regular, all these algorithms are done at regular 1 minute interval. And also if there is some theft somewhere, that theft is also detected in different areas. Now, these are different plots. Uh, this is the total available power at the substation, and this is the plot of kilowatt consumption of area 1 total kilowatt consumption. So you see at this time the available power has gone down. So since available power has gone down, the this has been detected by master controller, and then some loads are disconnected. So uh, loads are disconnected. Some of the loads are disconnected. Total connected load of area 1, this is page A, has gone down. So decrease in load. Loads are disconnected here. Loads are here once power comes back to normal value. Here loads are reconnected when available power increases. Is again reconnected. This is here load balancing. He has calculated some factor which is representing phase unbalancing. Unbalancing factor. So whenever this phase and unbalancing factor goes beyond 10%, then phase load balancing is done. So here you see at this time the phase unbalancing factor has gone around say between 15 to 20%, more than 10%. So here what is done? It was the load balancing algorithm was run, and based on that, the at this point you see load 8 and 20 are disconnected to make the loads balanced, and then this load balancing comes back to less than 10%. So again, it is connected at some point. Uh, Load 8 and 20 were disconnected, and uh, due to actually what he has done, he has disconnected load 8 and 20, and due to which the system becomes unbalanced. Say 8 and 20. 8 and 20 are connected in which page? Say when 8 and 20 connected in page B. So earlier, all three phases were drawing nearly equal power. Now, since 8 and 20 were disconnected, so it becomes unbalanced. Once it becomes unbalanced, then load balancing algorithm is run. So, based on load balancing algorithm, what is done? Uh, Load number 4 is transferred from page A to page B to make it balanced. The load number 4 is connected on page A. Now it is shifted to page B to make the system balanced. So load balancing algorithm was run, and then load number 4 is shifted from page A to page B to make it balanced. So that makes it balanced. PU of phase and balancing factor comes within the limit less than 10%. Then again at some time it becomes unbalanced, and same way the balancing is done. This is the overcurrent protection. Here you see there is phase A overcurrent. It was detected in phase A. To create overcurrent, uh, we increase demand at load number 1. So that resulted in overcurrent in phase A. And this overcurrent was detected by the overcurrent algorithm, leak protection algorithm. So what is done? It detected that this overcurrent is due to uh, excess power drawn by load number 1. So what he did, algorithm, he disconnects loads, disconnects load at this point. So once it gets disconnected, the current comes to the normal value within the range. So again, after some time, load number 1 is reconnected. Once load reconnected, again current exceeds more than 10% of the rated value. So again, it is disconnected, and it is done until all currents are within limits. This overcurrent was due to excess power drawn by some consumer. That is load number 1. Another cause of overcurrent may be due to theft. Uh, Due to theft. For theft, what is done? For creating theft, he connected some extra load here. Extra load was connected here in some of the places. Apart from these loads, these are legal loads. Some illegal loads were connected. Once illegal loads are connected, what happens? The sum of all smart meter readings will not be equal. Phasor sum of currents down by all smart meters were differing by the current at the substation. Because substation, the DT secondary current is phasor sum of current, phasor sum of all legal currents as well as illegal current in different phases. So in some of the phase, if in some of the phase there is theft, then what will happen? Thus, if there is no theft, then the DT secondary current in some of the in all the phases will be almost equal to magnitude of phasor sum of current of all smart meter readings. But in case there is some theft, in that case, the sum of phasor sum of smart meter currents measured by smart meters will differ from DT secondary current magnitude. So based on that threat were detected. So what he did, he connected some illegal load at some of the point here, in some of the fields. And that was detected by theft detection algorithm because it was compared with some of smart meter. DT secondary current was compared with some of currents of smart meter ratings. And since there was difference, so it detected that there was over current due to power theft. So once overcurrence is there, he detected that there was theft in phase C. So see, there was a theft in phase C. So what he does, there is there is some program, and in program, the MATLAB in command window, it generates alarm. Message is coming. Power theft on phase C of area 1 at time t is equal to 2.1 into 10 to the power minus 1. But that is 0.2 second, 0.21 second. At 0.21 second, there is some power theft. So this is detected. So these things he has done. Uh, so we can conclude the secure operation of, I think I exceeded by 15 minutes. Uh, um, mm, Secure operation power system requires maintenance of stability when under severe contingency, and power system components can be modeled by set of differential algebraic equation. State space model may be quite helpful in stability analysis for nonlinear system, including power system. Transient stability may be also assessed by direct approach, and these things we have talked. Synchrophasor technology is quite helpful in the stability assessment in smart grid. Smart distribution system is to made it smart for complete or completely making whole grid smart. And smart grid distribution system consider smart communication or controls. And consumers may be produce electricity, inject power, and we projected some survey of smart metering project, and the whatever smart distribution system was developed by student, it is able to disconnect, reconnect different loads based on available power. Okay, so now you can have any queries. Any queries you can ask.
Yes, participants are requested. Mr. Nikhil Ahire has asked already one question. Please unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Hello,
Ah,
am I
sir.
audible?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you are
yeah.
audible.
Sir, can you explain about the frequency tracking step used by the PMU, by which it estimates the period of fundamental component before the actual phasor is being estimated?
So that
Means what
is
is the
not
frequency
in
tracking step?
that is not in my presentation, but I can suggest you one book is written by on the wide area monitoring system. There is one book by Fadke.
Padke.
Fadke, yeah. So you can go through that book. There is complete book on VAMPs. Okay, so in that it is very well explained how that is done by DFT algorithm. Okay.
Sir, can you
So
repeat the name of the book?
that is wide area measurement system by Fadke.
Okay, sir.
Exact. Okay. Any other any other question?
Thank you, sir. Next is
No other question? Any
Yeah,
other
yeah.
query?
One question is there, sir. Shubhangi, please
Yeah,
unmute
yeah.
yourself. I think she is not available. Anybody more from participant side? Okay, so we will stop here, and I am very much thankful, sir, for your valuable information. You covered so much points regarding power system stability, its reliability, security, classification of power systems, power grid, and you covered all control system in your first few slides.
Sir, I
Because
have one question.
yeah. So as there is no any question more from participant side, we will
Sir,
conclude the session.
Can I ask?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is often we see that application of optimization algorithms in these power system field. Sometimes we do tuning. So
Yeah.
my question is how reliable it is to employ some optimization algorithm for tuning online application and real applications. Is it reliable?
The optimizer algorithm that depends upon how much it is speed. No? It will depend on the speed of algorithm. It for testing reliability, you have to test on some real-time system. Say whatever results you are getting from optimizer algorithm. Now you verify on some say RTDS or other simulator, and you can say then you can test its reliability. The results are to be compared with some real-time simulator. Then only you can test its reliability.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, sir. And shall we stop, sir, here?
Yeah.
Dr. Okay. So, dear participants, thank you for your communication and asking few questions. I think this is value addition session for you also. And I will conclude this session here. We will meet in afternoon session sharp at 3 p.m. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks all. Thank you. So I can quit now.
Yes, sir.